Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a lovely day here in suburban Chicago. I've just dropped my son off at the bus. I finished my grading yesterday, which means I need to attend to a little bit of email this morning, and then bong, I'm going to upload the grades, and there we will be, done with the semester. I have 2 weeks off, and then my spring class starts. So, not a huge delay. Actually, no, it's not even 2 weeks. It's like a week. So, but it is nice to switch pace and to move into the summer schedule, which is going to be busy, but it is what it is. So, today I am taking a longer walk than usual after dropping my son off to record 2 episodes of the podcast because I got a little behind. I only recorded 1 episode last week and I recorded 1 episode this week. So I'm going to record this episode we're listening to now and drop it today. And then I'll record another episode and queue it up for Monday so that we're at least kind of on pace or kind of back to a schedule. And then I'll do 3 a week after that, hopefully. Maybe more. We'll see. So, I thought I would, given that it's the end of my semester and I'm moving into summer term, it seems like I should, talk about summer. And I looked through my records, and it turns out I never did a board game sommelier episode about summer. It feels like I've done all the other seasons. I did an autumn, I did a fall, and I did a winter, but I've never done a summer one. So here we are, board game sommelier, summer. For those of you who haven't heard a board game sommelier episode before, a sommelier, of course, is the person at the restaurant who can suggest good wine and food pairings. And so that's kind of what I'm doing, only I'm doing it with films and games. Sometimes it's other literary works, but I think most of the way here it's going to be films and games. I may throw in a few odd references here and there. And the way I do it is I pick a theme, like, for instance, for this episode, it's going to be summer. And then within that theme, I choose a couple narrower things to discuss and talk about them in that context of that bigger theme. But basically I pick out some subsets, things that go well with the idea of summer. So let's jump into it, right? I've got 4 different categories to suggest. The first one I want to suggest, because I'm starting my summer, and children at least often refer to it as summer vacation, we're going to talk about vacation. Vacation, that epitome of summer activities, because children don't have school, so parents can take a little time off and go somewhere. It is a summertime thing, especially in America. And so I thought about what is a interesting take on that. For a book, I would recommend Vacation Land by John Hodgman. John Hodgman is a humorist and essayist who lives primarily in New York, but also has a home in Maine and spends a fair amount of time there in the summer, particularly. His book about sort of acquiring a second home or a vacation home in Maine and the experience of that is pretty interesting and I think worth reading. He's a funny writer. So if you want nonfiction about vacation, Vacation Land by John Hodgman is the way to go. If you want a fiction experience, my first instinct was National Lampoon's Vacation starring Chevy Chase, the classic family one, or the newer one starring Ed Helms. I have not seen that one, but I'm sure it's funny. Ed Helms usually is. But then I thought about what I'm going to recommend for a game, and the game that I'm going to recommend sort of vacation related, but also about nature, and this is Parks. Parks is, of course, a game I've talked about on the podcast before. It's about the national parks and sort of about exploring that space and set collection and sort of Takedo broken into 4 rounds instead of 1 long game. And so I thought about what kind of movie or text is all about that same kind of activity and hiking. And I thought of the sort of bizarre coming-of-age survival story, the 1971 Australian film Walkabout, in which a father abandons his children in the outback and they have to find their way back to civilization by themselves. It's an interesting and dark film, but worth checking out if you've never seen it. It's a classic, and it seemed like an interesting thing to pair with Parks. The other one I considered was 127 Hours, which that's real dark. So I didn't have any sort of light hiking movies. I guess there's that Reese Witherspoon movie about hiking. I never saw it. But so vacation, I would recommend Parks and Walkabout. And perhaps Vacation Land by John Hodgman. So one of the other things I heavily associate with summer are the movies. I've always enjoyed watching movies in the summer. My first several years that I had jobs, I would work at a movie theater. I started as an usher, and then I worked concessions, and then I worked box office, and then finally I worked in the projection booth. My summers of my junior and senior year, I spent a lot of time working at the movie theater, and I kept working there, sometime part-time in the summers, in the first couple of years of college as well, because movie theaters are great, and it's fun to work at them because you get to go see movies for free. So I think about the movies. Now there's a couple ways to go for this. First, we could go games that embody the spirit of the movies. So something like Fortune and Glory, which is kind of a movie, the Indiana Jones type movie as a game, and that would be a sort of fun game to suggest there, and then you could pair that with Indiana Jones. But I wanted to lean another way. I want to talk specifically about the movies. Now, I have reviewed and talked a little bit about Roll Camera, which is a game about making movies, about running a movie studio, or making a movie, I guess. And so I would suggest pairing Roll Camera with a movie about making movies. So there's 3 examples I have there for you. Each is interesting in its own way. The Big Picture is a dark satire of filmmaking. That's the one I would suggest most heavily. It stars Tim Robbins as a sort of corrupt movie exec trying to get a movie made, and I feel like I used to know people who were in it because when I played the Kevin Bacon game. That's why I know about The Big Picture. But then I went and watched it, and it's pretty great. It's dark satire, but great. Now, if you wanted more old-timey movie stuff, you could go with Barton Fink. Barton Fink is one of the early Coen Brothers movie. It's very artsy-fartsy, or slow at least. It's a slow burn thriller in which a playwright who thinks a lot of himself artistically, played by John Turturro, gets a job writing pictures for Hollywood. And of course, the pictures they want to write are like wrestling pictures or something. And so it's a lot of set pieces of people talking fast and sort of classic Hollywood as a style. It's pretty entertaining. It's dark, really, really dark. John Turturro and John Goodman are both in it, and it definitely takes place in the summer. Like, the heat of the summer is a key part of the story. There's this sort of forever dripping wallpaper, and John Goodman sweating a lot is great. So if you haven't seen Barton Fink, I would recommend that to go along with the Roll Camera as a fairly light and breezy movie making game. A third option, if you wanted a movie about making a movie, would be Main Street. It's a David Mamet film about making movies. I'm not sure, or State and Main. It's called State and Main, excuse me. I'm not sure I'd recommend that though, if nothing else, because David Mamet has turned into not a great person in the last few years, at least in terms of the kinds of stuff he's written, which, he may always have been misogynist, but that stands out now more than it used to. But so that's thinking about the movie theme in summer, and there you go. So Roll Camera and The Big Picture. Next up, what do we think of most when we think of the summer? Maybe you said vacation, maybe you said the movies, but I bet in the heart of hearts you thought of the beach. The beach is the thing that people do in the summer, right? That's why Jaws was a big hit in the summer. And actually, now that I think about it, Jaws would be a great recommendation. You could watch Jaws and you could play the Jaws board game. That's a little too on the nose though, but I am thinking about the beach. And particularly, I think a good recommendation would be the AEG game, Santa Monica. Santa Monica is a game about building shops and beachfront properties in Santa Monica, California. It has a very beachy vibe. You have tourist meeples who are have little silkscreen cameras on them. You have local meeples that have little sunglasses. And the first player marker is a seagull. This is a game that is all about breezy summertime fun time. And I think it'd be hard to go wrong playing Santa Monica as your beach game. But I was thinking about what would be an interesting pairing with that. There's a number of movies about the beach. I haven't seen the Rock Baywatch satire movie, but that seems like potential. You could go with something action focused like Point Break. But then Point Break is a movie about surfing, but it's not really a movie about the beach, I don't feel like, particularly to go with Santa Monica. Neither of those seem the right fit for the easy breezy attitude of Santa Monica, which got me thinking about a movie that isn't really about the beach, but feels very California or Florida in its attitude, although frankly it could be in like New Jersey, I really don't know. But is Empire Records. Empire Records is a sort of teen comedy about a bunch of slackers working at a music store and one day in the life of those slackers, a dramatic day in the life. In fact, Rex Manning Day. And it's just a great teen comedy movie. It's not gross out. It's just good character development, very funny, quotable lines. It's the thing that made me really like Rory Cochrane as an actor, although he's also in Dazed and Confused. And whenever he shows up, I'm like, oh, it's Lucas from Empire Records. Also, one of the places where I sort of most appreciated Anthony LaPaglia as the sort of mother hen to these lost souls who end up working at Empire Records. It's a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely a must watch. If you have like a teen and you want to have them find a movie that should connect, I think this one could be one. Plus they can be like, what's a record store? Yeah, so that's Empire Records. You should watch it along with Santa Monica for your beach themed movie time. As a quick aside, this seemed like an interesting pairing to me, I guess, because I'm thinking about like fantasy realms and safety. So I was thinking about the game Bonfire, which I originally added to this list to go with the solstice. And then I was thinking about like, what's a movie about the solstice? I thought about a number of sort of witchy or witch-themed movies that I can think of, but those are all like horror movies, and Bonfire is a very cute game. You have these little gnomes, and they're trying to light these bonfires for, a thin veneer of story reason. But you get this sense of ceremony and of magic. And what it reminded me of was Willow. The movie Willow also feels like a movie about magic and fun and ceremony and summer and little people and safety for the community. And so I'm not sure what the theme would be. Maybe solstice, maybe adventure at the solstice. But I really recommend taking a look at the movie Willow and then play it paired up with Bonfire. It seems like an interesting pairing. Although probably the people who want to watch Willow and the people who want to play Bonfire, that's not a huge overlap, I would imagine. So there's probably a better pairing, but no sommelier is perfect. All right, and the final category I wanted to mention, the other thing that summer is most closely associated with is heat, hot weather. And I was thinking about, I don't know what games there are about hot weather, about staying cool. I mean, I was tempted to say Anachrony because it's about, the world after a meteor strike, and so things are bad, but that's more like toxicity rather than heat. And ultimately I thought about, what about if I shifted from the heat of the sun to just heat, and then we could do an interesting pairing if you were to pair the 1990s volcano thrillers Dante's Peak and Volcano with the Klaus Wergen Yerd game. I don't know if that's his name. The guy who designed Carcassonne has this great game called The Fall of Pompeii. In The Fall of Pompeii, you are families, and first you're populating the city of Pompeii, and then when the eruption starts, you got to get all your people out of the city before they're killed by the pyroclastic flow of the volcano. It's pretty dark, kind of, but it's cute too, or funny too. And whenever you kill a person, you get to throw them in the volcano. So that part's kind of amusing. And it seems to me like pairing it with one of the movies that imagines volcanoes erupting in the United States would make for an amusing pairing as far as that goes. So on one hand, you have Volcano and Dante's Peak. Honestly, I've never seen either of those, so whichever one you prefer, go for it. You could also seek out the really cheesy Asylum made-for-TV movie, Super Volcano, which is about the magma cauldron under Yellowstone erupting. Now that's something that happens once every 600,000 years or 800,000 years or something. But we're due, apparently. So here's hoping that doesn't happen anytime in the next couple hundred years. What themes, what pairings do you think I'm missing from my discussion of summer? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and share your thinking about summer movies and summer games and what you think we should be talking about to talk about the summer. You can reach me by email, brendan@rattleboxgames, or direct message me on Board Game Geek. Wombat929 is my username there. I would love to hear from you because I enjoy connecting with our listeners. We're up to 27 members of the guild. That seems like a lot to me. I mean, it's tiny, but we are a tiny and proud group of listeners. But if you haven't joined the Board Game Geek Guild yet, go ahead and do that. I also noticed that we have 5 reviews of the podcast over on Apple Podcasts. That's really generous. Thank you, anybody. Or no, we have 5 ratings. We've been rated. But as far as I can tell, we don't have any reviews yet. If you feel like promoting the podcast to people, you could tell a friend. That's probably the best way to spread it. Otherwise, if you post a review, I'm told that helps, mostly by other podcasts, but whatever. If you feel like telling people what this podcast is, posting a review would be nice. Wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts, I'll take it. Well, thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.